Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to the Eisenhower Institute's Perspectives podcast. Perspectives on politics and policy. And we have some really exciting perspectives today from three people who I've gotten to know and had a chance to work with, a couple of you, and I'm really very excited to just talk about your experiences with the Eisenhower Institute. So just to give you all a little background, the Eisenhower Institute has existed for over 42 years now, and for the last 16 years has been part of Gettysburg College, and we're a public policy institute. So my job is to create and provide opportunities for fantastic young people and future leaders like the three that we have here today to not only learn more about different issues, political issues, domestic policy, international policy issues, but to also dig your hands in and get to have a bit of an impact. So our guests today are Adam Torres, Natalie Frisch, and Saleha Iftikhar. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. All right. I've been practicing. Well, I had a whole summer with you to practice. Yes. We'll talk about that. And these three students have been involved in very different EI programs. So Adam, you were in our Building America program, which looks at domestic policy issues, focusing on transportation and health. So we'll get you to tell us a little bit about what you saw and what you learned and how you hope to carry that forward. Natalie, you've done several programs, but the one that you and I did together that was so interesting, we traveled to Oman for 12 days as part of your year-long program in our Global Focus program, which looks at foreign policy issues. And Saleha, you've done a few also, but you and I, as I said, spent the summer together as part of our Washington Summer Fellowship. And so you got to come to DC and intern and, like we say, live, work, and learn there. So let's start out really just tell us a little bit about yourselves and who you are. We know that you're Gettysburg College students, but I'll throw it to you first, Natalie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to be involved in this EI program.
Well, thank you. Well, the Eisenhower Institute was one thing that really stood out to me when I was looking for colleges and doing my whole college search. I was looking for that kind of program where you could have really experiential programs to learn outside of the classroom and get that basis. And I'm an international and global studies major, so I was really looking for that global lens to my education. So that's what really caught my eye with the Eisenhower Institute as a whole, but also the Global Focus program specifically with looking at Oman for my session specifically.
Well, we'll talk about Oman in a second. Adam, how did you come into EI's orbit, or how did we come into your orbit?
Well, I interned with the Washington semester when I was studying domestically, and I was working with the DC Department of Transportation and the mayor's office and really learning about how many layers of policy that transportation touches. And so when I heard about this Building America program that was dealing with domestic policy related to transportation and health and equity, I just felt like, yes, this is the most linear path. This is going to give me a really holistic experience about transportation, and I was really excited to dive into it.
Good. Awesome. And Saleha?
Yeah, for me, same as Natalie, Eisenhower Institute was one of the things that I was really inspired by when I was applying to colleges. And then I came in and I was taking a class with Professor Dowds, and I heard about one of the programs.
She's a dynamo.
She's
so cool.
Professor Dowds, yeah. So I heard about one of the programs that she was doing that spring, and I knew I wanted to be involved on campus. I knew EI was one of the things I had already learned about before coming, and then I was like, okay, I'll apply to Women in Leadership. That program was my freshman year, and it was all about just meeting some super cool DC women and going to their workplaces and learning.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just came out as actually such a different person, and I just got to learn so much from Dowds. And ever since, I always just apply to EI programs each semester.
That's exciting. And it also makes me feel good. You're making me feel all warm fuzzy. Because my goal, so as you all know, we've talked about this, my background is not higher education. My background is media. I spent my entire career helping people understand the world around them. So all these policy issues that you all are talking about and that you've worked with, my job was to explain them to the public and help people understand this is how this impacts your daily life. And then 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to come and lead these programs at EI for Gettysburg College. And I love the fact that you all can delve into this in a different and complementary way of what you learn in the classroom, right? Because we never want to really inappropriately draw that comparison. That classroom learning is significant and it's important before I think you have these experiences. But I think what we're doing here is complementary to that, because then you get to go beyond the classroom and see in the real world, you know, what's happening in transportation and international relations and other areas. So I'm going to start with you, Adam, because of the three people here, you're the one I haven't had a chance to travel with yet, but you have had an opportunity to travel, and experiential learning travel is a big part of what we do, right? We want to get you out into the places where things are happening. So tell us about your program and tell us about your travel and how that related.
Well, I love that it's called the Eisenhower Institute, because that's one of the foundation parts of this Building America program is the Eisenhower interstate system, and how it united communities and how it built those highways that allowed you to travel those long distance, but also disconnected communities for where those highways broke through certain neighborhoods. So specifically, we traveled to Syracuse and Rochester, and we're looking at their policy programs and how they're ameliorating those problems that came about because of the highways. So for Syracuse, it's the I-81 viaduct, which actually went through the first public housing that was established in the United States, and was predominantly Black, which brings in the equity concerns. And it also today has the highest asthma occurrence inside of the city because of that viaduct. And so right now they're tearing it down. And for me, that's a policy success. But we're also studying the concerns that go into that, the construction concerns, what happens to the land now, what's going to be on top of the land now, and all of the different stakeholders who want to build businesses, all the people who want to build their homes there. And Rochester, we saw a different lens because it was the Inner East project that they took down. And so this policy program has been completed. So we saw there that they had parks and businesses. They expanded the museum that they built there. And yeah, that really was the crux of the program, understanding a policy program that's in progress in Syracuse, and then what are the possibilities in Rochester when you take down these highways and reconnect these communities.
This is so interesting, and you brought it up that the Eisenhower connection. He, of course, launched the interstate system, which was very much needed at that time, right? In the 50s, we had to have a way to get commerce back and forth in a much more efficient way than we were doing across America. So this had a huge impact on our economy, a huge positive impact on our economy. But what you're now looking at is 50 plus years later. It's also interesting. There's a personal connection for me because this is how old I am. I did a story when I was working in media on the 50th anniversary of the interstate highway system. And so I have a personal connection to this. But now, you know, more than half a century later, we are starting to see that there were some other effects and impacts of that that we need to take a close look at. How was it for you, say, learning about these things in a classroom setting versus, you know, standing on a hill in Rochester, maybe overlooking an area that was under or had been under development?
Well, it's a scary thing because when we're in the classroom, we're talking about stakeholders, but really what we do is the research. We research what stakeholders are saying, and we're applying it into our papers, and we're trying to create a holistic research response to all these issues when we're in our policy classes. But then to actually meet the stakeholders where they're at, that it takes like a certain bravery and like a certain courage. And I feel like that's really what I was learning like during this program. And we were discussing imposter syndrome right before this podcast. And during my internship, I feel like that it ameliorated a lot of those like difficulties, like internal difficulties. And that's why I was like, okay, I can do this Eisenhower Institute program. Like I have the bravery, I have the skill set. Like I know I can do this. I can meet these stakeholders where they're at, and I can travel to Syracuse and Rochester. So it was really like a healing experience. It was a deeply like learned experience. It was exciting to experience new cities. That's how
Who
I
are
would
some of the
describe
people
it.
that you talked to when you
So we were talking to some reporters with the Urban Phoenix, and so they are primarily focused on speaking about the policy in Rochester. And then in Syracuse, we were working with the upcoming architect who just graduated from his master's program in Syracuse University. And so these were really people that are just entering into this field and that are like learning and unlearning some of the things that they learned in school and trying to apply it to their communities. The architect actually in Syracuse, he brought us to a house that he's building in his neighborhood that's right near the I-81 viaduct deconstruction. And so it was really lovely to be with people who were literally in these communities, writing about these communities, worked in these communities for years.
I love this for you because I'm hearing what you said, and I'm sure you all have had this experience as well. We don't want to educate you and then dump you out into the world to all of a sudden start learning and trying to figure out, how do I communicate with people? Like, it's one thing to read about them and to research about them, but how do I interact in a very real way? We want to do that in an integrated way. We want to give you the opportunity to do that while you're in the learning process. So I love this for you, that you were able to bring together both of those experiences, your DC internship and some of Saleha's colleagues this past summer actually worked in that same office for you.
Yeah.
So but that you were able to integrate that in a very real way. It's awesome. All right, Natalie, tell us about your experience. You were in our 1-year global focus program that focused on Oman, which I'm going to tell you, most people probably couldn't even find on a map, but you can, because you've now been there, right?
Yes, it was the whole program and the trip, absolutely incredible, like highlight of my life. But last year, I was really lucky to get to participate in these bi-weekly meetings led by Professor Linda Pappas-Funch, one of our guest professors who helped lead the program, and just getting to learn everything about Oman. It's not a nation that you hear about too much in the Middle East, so getting to really learn about their transformation over the past 50, 60 years. And then getting to travel there in person was incredible. What I really appreciate about the program was the variety of the perspectives. We got to meet with government officials such as the Minister of Information and some members from the Foreign Affairs Office, but then also getting to meet
Even the U.S. ambassador.
Even the
Sat
U.S.
down with you while you were
ambassador.
there.
She was amazing to speak to. And then also getting to speak with college students our age, or even just like the everyday people such as our drivers and our guides, just getting a full picture about the foreign policy and the trade and everything there is to know about Oman. It was really valuable, especially since I'm an international relations major, kind of focusing on the Middle East. It really added such a valuable experiential component to everything that I've learned inside the classroom as well.
Yeah. And the early morning livestock auction.
Yes.
Remember that?
So many
They were
baby
like-
goats.
So I was fortunate to go on this trip, and as we were going through and building the itinerary, it was like at 7 a.m. we're going to get up and we're going to go to a livestock auction. I was like, what? But one of the things that I have valued about being able to provide these experiences is, while we're there to examine and study the very important and weighty issues of politics and society and things like that, it is so important, particularly in the Middle East, I think, to understand how culture overlays and impacts with those things, right? The fact that they still have a 7 a.m. livestock auction.
Absolutely.
Right? Early in the morning, or some of the other things that we did, learning about the canal system, right?
Right.
That the irrigation system that feeds the crops, that feed the economy there, things like that.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible for sure. And I definitely appreciate that. We definitely worked in all of our working hard meetings and everything. But like you said, experiencing the culture and getting to be there during Ramadan was really special. And the Minister of Information, he took a special liking to us and he invited us to his Iftikhar. So we got to break fast with him. And it ended up being pretty high profile, like 200 guests. But it was incredible to get to meet all of those people and engage in the cultural and religious activities as well.
And so as you continue your studies in international affairs. And as you start thinking about what you may want to do in 2 years, when you're right, when you're out of Gettysburg, a little less than 2 years then.
Yeah.
How will this experience sit in your thinking and your planning? How does this help you think about where you'd like to be or how you'd like to use these experiences as you build a career in international relations?
It was definitely an experience in cultural immersion, being in a different place. But I know that I have confidence that I'm able to be in a different place and not be freaked out that, oh, this isn't what I'm used to, this isn't what I'm used to. And that with my communication and personality, I'm able to communicate with people across different backgrounds. And so I'm definitely be interested in working abroad. And I know that through my experiences in Oman, like I have those skills to do so. So it was amazing.
I can see you as a foreign service officer. Is that something you'd consider
Yes,
doing?
definitely.
Yeah. All right, State Department, if you're listening.
Get ready for me. I'll see my resume
Right
soon.
over there. All right, Saleha, let's talk about your experiences. You talked a little bit about women in leadership, and Dr. Dowds, who led that program, which is a fascinating program. But then this past summer, you spent 10 weeks with us in Washington, D.C., doing something that you did not initially envision doing, right?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'm a computer science major, and unlike Natalie and Adam, I don't have a public policy background or much of that knowledge. But like, again, as I mentioned earlier, I was interested in the EI because I knew I could get that public policy knowledge and like learn about like the current issues, but also stick with my major. And what I really appreciated about the Washington Summer Fellowship was that we used to have these Wednesday roundtable sessions with my entire cohort of fellows and also with some guest speakers. Most of them were Gettysburg graduates, so they had sat in those chairs before.
But these were people who were working and had careers in
Yes.
Washington and could really sort of show you the breadth of what you can do in
Yeah.
the nation's capital.
Yeah. So from those Wednesday sessions, I would learn about all of the policy issues, get my questions answered, learn from people working in different sectors in DC. But then in addition to that, I had my 10-week internship in DC as well, which was a dream of little Saleha, as I mentioned in my application when I applied. But my internship initially, I was having a hard time finding one, but Tracie was of great help to me. And I found my internship, which was actually which initially I thought was not what I wanted, but it ended up being exactly what I want to say dreamt of. So for my internship, I was working at Angus, which is the Enlisted Association of the National Guard. It's a nonprofit based in DC, and they basically had a directory in spreadsheet of like data from the past 50 years. And like every time they would need to access that data, they would go through the spreadsheet. And then in my interview, they were like, so do you think you can help us with this? And I was like, actually, yes. And I spent the entire summer basically digitalizing it for them. My boss would always say, you brought us to like the 21st century. And I basically made a platform for them, which was used by all 50 states and by their national office. So now they did not have to go to the spreadsheets. They could actually just like search it up using a search bar and made it a lot easier for them.
Okay, I'm hiring you next. I would appreciate that as well.
But yeah, so for me, again, as I said, I was able to get my computer science knowledge over the summer as well, because everything I did over the summer is what I'm doing for my capstone, my senior capstone this semester. So like I got like everyone else in my class, they're still learning some of those things. And I'm like, oh, I actually did all of this. But then again, from those Wednesday sessions, and we used to have some field trips. One of them was when we went and explored one of the neighborhoods in DC just to learn about the DC culture. And we went to the People's House one of the days, which was really cool, just learning about the White House and its history. So it was definitely a super cool experience for me, just like giving me exactly what I wanted. And I was able to make some super fun memories.
That's awesome. And you talked about building this platform for Angus, for your internship employer, which is great because when you think about it, you were able to do two things. You were able to take that, again, that base knowledge that you learned in your computer science classes and apply it in a very practical way. And you now see in a very practical way the impact of that on an actual organization that you can take back to use in your capstone. So it really sort of worked both ways. So you talked about the Wednesday roundtable. So we, as you said, we bring in people every Wednesday night, you know, we break bread with them, and then we talk a little bit about their career experiences and oftentimes their personal experiences too, like what was your road and what was your path to get there. And then we also do the field trips. You mentioned the People's House, and then we spent a whole day in Brightwood with students. And that was really interesting because one of the things that I always say is I really don't want all of my students who have been in my programs are going to be like, oh my gosh, she's saying that again. But I feel very strongly about this. I don't want to send you all out into the world with all of this knowledge and all of this experience making policy decisions or influencing those making policy decisions and assisting with that process without ever having had the on-the-ground experience of who is this impacting, right? I don't want you in, you know, ivory towers writing reports and white papers and things, having not walked the walk, right? Met people, as you talked about, Adam, meeting people, talking with them about their experiences. Why is transportation important? Walking through neighborhoods and seeing, oh, this is how long it takes to get from point A to point B. Talking with people, not only the foreign minister, but like our drivers in Oman, right? About their daily life experiences, because one day the three of you will be in positions to make or help make decisions that will impact these people's lives. So I'm glad to know that you all had those experiences. So any of you, tell me a little bit about, from a personal perspective, if at all, like how these experiential learning opportunities have helped you grow as individuals.
Well, I would say, like I'm a queer Black Latino man, and that's something that was also difficult to grasp as I was taking policy classes for the first time. So yes, there's 1,000% stakeholders that I have never met and that I hope to meet, and that there's policies that are impacting them that in no way impact me. But as a person who lived in public housing for like a large part of my life, like I said, like as a queer Black Latino man who's entering into this policy field, there sometimes I am the stakeholder, and sometimes I am thinking about this perspective of the policies that I'm writing about. And I feel like fully contextualizing that and realizing that my experience and policy don't have to be separate. They don't have to divide amongst themselves, and I don't have to like assimilate and mold myself into something in order to be engaging in policy. I just have to be myself and utilize my experience as an instrument and not a detriment to what I want to achieve with policy, especially with transportation. When I was in high school in Philadelphia, I had to take a bus about 30 minutes and then a train about another 30 minutes and do the same thing on my way back home. Taking about an hour 15 every day just to get to school. And that's just in one city. That's just, North Philadelphia to South Philadelphia. And it really shows that it's not just highways that are creating these divides, it's how they formulate the transportation and where they establish where the routes are going and who they believe matters most when they're making those policies. So, and with the Eisenhower Institute, with my DC semester and my whole time at Gettysburg, I feel like context and honoring experiences of everyone has been like one of the most important things that I've learned, like going forward.
I so appreciate you saying that. I was actually thinking about that today regarding myself. So I'll be a little vulnerable and transparent here. I'm newer in higher ed. This is something that I'm still learning. But one thing I've done my whole life, and I know really well, is communications and how to sit down and have conversations like this with people. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to do a podcast. I thought, this is the way I know how to connect with people. But I was reluctant to do what you said, which is bring your whole self to the table, your whole personal experience to the table. So for a long time, because my job is to uplift students and give students the opportunity, so I decided not to host a podcast myself. But that is the thing I know how to do, right? How to have conversations with people and bring out of them their stories. And frankly, it's something I love to do. So that's actually what encouraged me to come and have this conversation with you all today. And I think that all of us should remember that whatever those experiences are that have made us who we are, that have brought us to the place where we are, it's important to bring those things to the table. You are at that table because you may be the only person or one of the few people who've had that experience to bring into the mix. So I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, the Eisenhower Institute programs have definitely contributed to my personal growth. I've been a very introverted person, especially in high school, always afraid to assert myself or even ask questions. I never would have agreed to this 2 years ago, I'm telling you that. But definitely putting myself out there and putting myself in the position where I'm part of these Eisenhower Institute programs, it's helped me gain so much confidence. And Adam mentioned imposter syndrome earlier. That's something I've also faced before, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I was one of the youngest ones in the program, the Global Focus program last year. I was like, wow, these seniors are all so accomplished. I'm nothing like that right now. But pushing myself to ask those questions and then acknowledging that I understand this, I'm asking great questions, I'm getting along with everyone else, that's given me so much confidence. So it's really helped bring me out of my shell.
That's exciting. We did talk about, and I want to get to your personal insights too, Saleha, but we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, and I talk a lot more publicly about that now because it's something, that voice in your head that keeps saying, you don't deserve to be here, or you're not ready. Right? You're not ready to be here. And everyone else can see that. And they're going to figure it out. You're going to get booted off the island at some point. It's not just Gen Z, right? It's not just, I'm Gen X. I'm a proud Gen Xer. But I deal with that all the time, particularly in the last few years. Because as I said, I am new in higher ed. So to walk onto a campus, whether large or small, where everyone has a PhD and people are mistakenly, this happens all the time, people mistakenly call me Dr. Potts and I'm like, whoa, stop. It can be intimidating and it can make you question and ask yourself, why am I here? Do I deserve to be here? Am I bringing something to this experience, to the table, to this meeting, to this institute that is of value? And I think we need to talk more publicly about it, so that I can see that younger people than I are dealing with that, and so that you can see that people who may be much more senior in experience to you are dealing with the very same thing. I think it is something very much worth talking about. But the more I see you guys, honestly, and the more I become more comfortable in your own skin, I realize that every single one of us brings something unique to the table. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something on my resume or a title or a degree, all of which are honored and honorable. But we should all remember that thing we bring to the table is important too. I didn't know you were one of the youngest students until I looked it up later. But when I first met you, Natalie, I did not know. I saw someone who is always prepared, extremely poised. I'm like, look at her. I'm impressed with all these students, but I'm like, she's sitting here asking questions of the foreign minister of, a nation. And I'm just sitting back there feeling all proud. But the things that we see of ourselves are not always the things that others see of us.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Saleha? Do you feel that these experiences have helped you grow personally also?
Yeah, no, I would say I think I got to grow so much over the summer because I moved in a week before in my summer housing for the fellowship, a week before my internship started. And I spent that entire week just calling my mom and telling her, I don't deserve to be here. I don't think I'm good enough for this internship or even for this program. And she would be like, no, Saleha, you were chosen for a reason. And then I started my internship just like all dressed up in my suit, going to my 9 to 5. That was my first ever big girl internship experience. And day one, I was still shaking, talking to my supervisor at work. But I feel like eventually I just started giving them what they were asking for in terms of the work, and they started complimenting what I was doing, which really helped me gain that confidence and really start believing that, okay, I was there for a reason. And then there were times when if I was struggling with things at work, our Wednesday roundtable sessions were so helpful because it was never just me. It was me and all of my other fellows as well. And it was such a tight-knit community with Tracie, Lizzie, and like we could always share what struggles we were having at work, and they would give us such good advice. We could ask from our guest speakers, what is that one advice you would give an intern to get a return offer and things like that. But I really got to learn, and I feel like eventually by the end, I really saw that confidence boost. Like I was really happy with the product I was giving to my supervisor, and I would say I was really happy by the end of it.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like we're going to have to add another P to the perspectives and policy and politics podcast in psychology, right? Because I think that a lot of these issues that we're talking about relate to self-talk. How do we tell ourselves that we are worthy of being in the experience where we are, and we all deal with that. I was thinking when you were talking about your first day on the job, and you put on your suit, you go there, but like on the inside, you're like, ooh, what's going on? It reminded me of the first day that I went to work for NBC News in their Washington office. I was 12 years into my career, so I wasn't brand new. I had worked for them in Los Angeles. I had worked at a couple of small TV stations, but I was like, Washington, it's a big thing. I was so nervous, and I had, accepted this job, and I think I was overwhelmed with, I'm going to be covering Congress and the federal government, and there's so many issues and people, and it's so complicated. And my first day, I was so nervous. I went into the ladies' room. I physically got sick. I don't know if I ever told that story to the people I work with in my here and now, but I was so nervous. I worked myself up so much asking, am I prepared to do this? And I was, and I ended up working in that office for 18 years. I was the senior correspondent there at the time that I left. And I made mistakes like we all do. But, I learned my craft, and I was able to do it. And all of you will too. All right. So wrap up round, last round. I am just really curious, as you all begin to think past your college career, what kinds of things you might be interested in doing. Any of you? Like when I'm old and in my rocking chair and I turn on my TV, where am I going to find you?
I can start. I have the most time left until I'm in that position, so good luck to you too. But since I was little, I've always had the dream of being in the Peace Corps. So I'm interested in maybe doing that straight out of college. But then my goal is to either be in Washington, D.C. or abroad, either working for the U.S. government or just working on an international issue related to the Middle East, North Africa, since that's the region that I'm most interested in. But fingers crossed, hoping to get there.
Yeah, fingers crossed, and preparation too. And you're there, right? You're already working on that. You're going to have such great experiences to talk about when you get that first interview for your first great opportunity. That's great.
For me, it's kind of interesting because I kind of was on a similar path as you for a while. I wanted to do international affairs, and I wanted to work with foreign governments and work with the United Nations. And then everything kept going down into a micro scale. I removed myself from the macro scale as I became more and more immersed in rural policy and urban policy. And so now I kind of see myself working in municipal government, and I eventually want to go to law school. But after I go to law school, I still want to return to municipal government. At the DDOT office, there was like a transportation liaison, and she was a lawyer, and she was dealing with DUIs and the efficacy of like transportation policy and the legality of it. And I can see myself doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I tell you, Adam, these things are not necessarily, they're interchangeable. So you can most certainly build a career working in municipal government and address some of those issues that you talked about that you know well personally, that you're now getting to know well from a policy perspective. But there are international connections to that as well. So at EI, we have a senior fellow who works in international economy and democracy, and he looks at what we call heartland areas in the United States, right? Post-industrial areas that are trying to reinvent themselves as green spaces and bounce back. And the exact same thing is happening in Europe. And part of what he does is bring people together for what can we learn from each other and how can we support each other as those same things are developing. So you never know where that might lead.
1,000%. And Vision Zero, which is a DDOT initiative, it started, I believe, in Finland or in Sweden. And so it's exactly what you're saying. We're learning from each other. We're a global community, and
Yeah, very exciting.
For me, very different from these two. I'm a computer science major, and I want to be a software engineer, and I want to work closely with AI. I don't know exactly where, but definitely just like tech related. But yeah.
You know what? These two are going to be calling you when they can't figure out how to put together the data that they need to make their programs run. But I think that's really interesting because as we didn't really, this is probably one of the rare conversations I have where we didn't really talk about AI. It seems to work its way into everything. But we are now in a time and place where that is having a pervasive impact on almost everything we do. And we're going to need smart people like you who have had these experiences to be able to, in a productive and ethical way, walk us through how AI can be helpful and where we need to maybe raise our eyebrows and be mindful of the sort of AI takeover that people.
please help us keep our jobs.
Please help us keep our jobs. Yeah, that would be great. So that's going to be really interesting. You would probably be interested in knowing that this coming summer, the summer fellows who will follow you, we've partnered with the Partnership for Public Service, their Future Leaders program, and they are going to be helping connect our students to AI-related internships. So yeah, that'll be really
interesting.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you all joining us and sitting down with me to talk about your insights and your experiences. And I will see you back on campus. And I guess we will wrap this up until next time when the Perspectives podcast will focus on something else.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll bring you guys back.
This was so amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.